Hey everyone, welcome back to the Addiction Help podcast. My name is Jessica Miller, and I am the editorial director of addictionhelp.com. And we are back with season 2. And it's funny, I say we because you're probably noticing, like, where's Dan? So Dan actually has his own show now. It's called Victory Over Vices. It's very cool, and you should check it out. We will drop the link below in the description. I feel like I'm going to be saying links below in the description a lot this episode, so there will be lots of things for you guys to go and look at. But first of all, I just wanted to say welcome back. It has been a nice break during the time away. I went to England. It was fantastic. And we did a lot of tooling around with what we have planned for season 2. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for season 2 because we have a lot of stuff planned, and that's going to include interviews and basically more information about the things that a lot of you kind of reached out and expressed that you were curious about or interested in, and just kind of see where it goes. So today we're starting off season 1 with a bang. I'm very excited. We actually got to have a special guest today, and our topic today, what I want to talk to everybody about today, is prevention. We spend a lot of time on this podcast, or have in the past in season 1, really going over addiction. And that's not going to change, but there is an important component to addiction that I feel like we haven't really covered yet so far, and that's prevention. And prevention is actually, it's incredibly important, and it's weirdly not talked about or looked at probably as much as it should be. And that it almost doesn't make sense, right? When you think about it. And there's something my grandmama used to actually say a lot that I think is relevant. She used to say all the time, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that really fits here as well. And what that essentially means is, an ounce, which is less than a pound for those of you who may not be super math savvy. It basically means, spending a little time on prevention is worth so much more than having to cure something. And when you think about it in terms of addiction, I mean, wouldn't it, obviously addiction happens, and I'm not here to shame anybody because it has happened to them, but what if we could just stop that from happening, right? What can we do to prevent people from going down that road? And that's something that is talked about a lot. There are tons of programs that exist. And so let's get into it a little bit before we jump over to the interview that I got to have today. So when it comes to prevention, first of all, why? Why do we care about prevention? Well, first of all, studies show that a lot of drug users, people that struggle with addiction, a lot of them started out dabbling with substances when they were kids. I mean, teenagers, 12 and up, yes, but I mean, you're still a kid at that phase. And that's where a lot of experimentation happens. We talk about, and lots of platforms talk about high school and peer pressure. We have it all over media, and it's a cultural, we just sort of know that for a lot of people, that's where they start messing around. And the problem with that, one of the problems with that, is that substances at that point in your life can actually change how your brain is developing, which is a huge problem, obviously. And, we know now your brain continues developing until age 25. So, I mean, with the drinking age being 21, your brain is still developing. That's potentially a whole other argument and a whole other podcast. But for today, we are going to focus a little bit more on overall prevention. So like I mentioned, prevention programs, essentially, their goal is to at least delay substance use amongst young people. So one of the things that comes up sometimes in conversations about prevention that I've heard, at least a few times, is, well, why kids? We should be directing these prevention programs at adults. But honestly, there's a lot of data that suggests talking to kids about drugs and substance abuse sometimes as early as possible is really important. And I did pull a couple of bullet points that I wanted to share with you all. So, first of all, early drug use and the likelihood of leading to addiction is honestly not uncommon. Kids, like I mentioned, kids are going to experiment. They're feeling potentially rebellious. That particular age group, their brains aren't fully developed. So they're going to be more open to risk taking, to trying to fit in with their peers. We talk about FOMO, or fear of missing out. So there's all these reasons why that kind of is the ideal group that we need to talk to when it comes to prevention. When you look at national data, again, the numbers start at 12, but that doesn't mean that kids even younger aren't exposed to drugs and alcohol, or aren't using or trying drugs and alcohol. And, it's something that we talked about later today, my guest and I, but really, you know, culturally, sometimes it can be a part of alcohol, especially can be a part of cultures where kids are around it all the time. It's not seen as such a big deal. And listen, I am not here to shame somebody's culture, how you were raised, or anything like that. I just want to suggest that the differences there can sometimes set up exposure where, yeah, if you're going to argue, well, maybe we shouldn't be talking to kids about this stuff. I mean, yeah, we should. Kids are around it. They see it. They know what's going on. Kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. So, just to give you guys a brief kind of overview when it comes to prevention, right? That's a fancy word, but what does it actually mean? Those strategies are going to be like family-based programs, school-based programs. If you're a 90s, 80s, 90s kid like me, you remember DARE. Things in the community, and even just like programs in a healthcare setting. And what prevention overall means to do. And like I said, there's lots of different programs out there, but overall, they're aiming to provide accurate information, skills, and resources to basically educate young people so that they understand more before dabbling, and hopefully to prevent them from abusing substances. And I feel like that's the perfect segue for the red, gosh, it's such a tongue twister, Red Ribbon Week. And that's one of the prevention programs that we're highlighting today because our special guest works very closely with that program. So what is it? Just to give you guys a overview, it is a prevention program that is essentially a commitment to living a healthy and drug-free life. And it goes from October 23rd to October 31st. And every year it has a different theme. So for 2023, the theme is Be Kind to Your Mind, Live Drug-Free. And I really like that as a mental health advocate and haver of a spicy brain. I can understand and appreciate wanting to be kind to your mind. And those of you who are around for season 1, who remember my story about alcohol and even kratom abuse, substance abuse is sneaky, and it can really take such a horrible toll on your mental well-being. But thankfully, there are wonderful people out there like Peggy, who I got to talk to today, that are working diligently and constantly to bring this education to our youth. So without further ado, we are going to cut to that interview so you guys can check out the cool conversation that I got to have earlier today. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming to talk with me today. This is Peggy Sapp, and Peggy is the president and CEO of the, I'm gonna make sure I say it all correctly, of Informed Families, which is the Florida Family Partnership. Did I get it right?
Correct. Yes.
Excellent. So I wanted to, for our audience, just discuss what that is very briefly before we start getting into Red Ribbon Week. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. And then kind of dive into more about you and the program, etc. So let's start with let's start with your organization. What would you like to tell me and tell our listeners about it?
Well, Informed Families, the Florida Family Partnership, started in 1982. Um, really as a request from Governor Graham, because Nancy Reagan was very caught up in, well, it hadn't been called Just Say No at that time, but in trying to create a parent movement. And so he asked us to help in Miami, and we said yes. I came from the junior league, so I should give you that background. He
Okay.
asked a very important question that everyone should ask when they're trying to network: who works in the community and who works with children? Well, the junior league.
Smart.
So that was a good one. And then here's what I said. Oh, I said, I'll have one meeting. I tell you, Jess, it's the longest meeting I've ever been in. It's a 40-year meeting, and it's the same meeting.
I love that, though. That's really great.
Because we can't seem to move forward. And when I say we, I don't mean Informed Families. We're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But the public, it's difficult to move people along when you come to the subject of addiction. And
Yes.
maybe the best thing that happened to us was we didn't know anything about addiction. So the first thing I did was go around and visit addiction treatment programs. And I said, well, why is it 30 days? And they said, because that's how much the insurance will pay for. I said,
Interesting. Uh-huh.
that is not an answer. And that's the same answer today, and it's still not an answer. So
Right.
that's how we started. We started as junior league volunteers, created this with the Federation of the Jewish Federation of Women's Clubs. So we had two big corporations, volunteer corporations in America, in Miami, who knew how to rally volunteers. And so that's what we did, and that's how Informed Families, the Florida Family Partnership, started.
Excellent. And then you sort of got into, so you were not previously involved in addiction and recovery and anything.
No, I had two teenage daughters, and my husband and I thought, well, if there's some way you can prevent all this, we want to get in there and do that. And so we were very receptive to learning exactly how you would do that. You see, I think that. And I include myself on this, we all want like 10 rules or a pill or some kind of
Right.
formula. Do this and then everything's okay.
If
And what
this,
I
then
discovered
that.
is not right. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, that's really fascinating. I also kind of fell into this industry as well, as sort of a writer. So I love talking to other people that have kind of had similar experiences where, then they sort of become passionate about it. And I can tell from your list of accolades and awards that this is obviously something that you care very deeply about. It's not just a project for you.
No, it is not, because the thing that when I had done some work with child abuse, and one of the statistics was that 67% of all child abuse is directly tied to alcohol and drugs. Well, being naive, I thought, well, when I just go tell all my friends that, they'll change the alcohol rules. No, that didn't happen. So over and over again, or when we discovered that the brain was not fully developed until 25, oh, now everybody will get it. That isn't how change works. I wish, but it isn't.
Right.
It's a slow process.
So in that same vein, then, I mean, how does change work? How does Informed Families really, I guess, evolve maybe? Or how is it continuing to push the agenda of prevention right now?
Right now. And I'm going to take you back a little bit to the history, because it ties into that.
Okay.
When you say, how does change work? Change works and when there are enough people who really believe in something, and they meet each other and they come together and they agreed. The thing that was amazing to me about this whole Nancy Reagan story, people from Florida, Oregon, Georgia, all came together with Nancy Reagan. And Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan really did want to solve this problem. This wasn't like picking some, I don't know, flower project. They really had a
Right.
commitment
This
to
is
this.
yeah.
So I remember going to my first meeting in Washington, and there were 10,000 people. literally. That's how many were here from all across America. They'd all paid their own way. And my friend, who was the president of the Junior League at the time, we said, this is phenomenal. They had great speakers, they had all these things, but they didn't have a structure that would hold volunteers. Volunteers are unique people. You've got to really involve them. They're a certain time frame, they're interested. Like if you've got a kid that's 12 years old, you're real interested in talking to me. If your kid's 4 years old, you're probably not as interested.
Right, right.
So
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. And so that was the fascinating part. It is a trend. Certain things take off. And then, gosh, we could have a whole topic about the media, because let's just say, here's what we know. And this, I don't know if you saw that we lit up the Paramount Tower in Miami, which is the tallest building in the Southeast. Ooh. So the person who was working with us to do it kept saying, you've got to say war on drugs. You got to say this, you got to say that. And of course, we want to talk about, I don't know, prevention and healing and all that, but that doesn't resonate throughout media and news. So when I listen to him, it's always hard to have to listen to somebody, right? We listened to him, and we were featured in 107 cities across America.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So you're asking me, how do you change, or how do you get trend? We always have this little wheel that shows the circle. The media is just one part of the circle. Mm-hmm. And what we have learned is you've got to speak the language of each of those spokes.
That makes a lot of sense. That's fascinating. I've never actually thought of it that way. So then how would you say, because I've been reading about Red Ribbon Day, and for those that are listening, or Red Ribbon Week, I keep wanting to say day, and how you got involved with that. I mean, what would you say, maybe it is in the language and maybe it is in this approach, but what sets Red Ribbon Week apart from like other awareness campaigns,
Okay. And let's just really talk about the drug thing, because I serve on the Governor's Drug Council, and I just had that meeting yesterday. And you talk about wonk, wonk, wonk. I mean, it's details, it's research, it's this, it's that. Well, that's really terrific. I mean, I have found myself in this 40-year meeting that I'm one of the few volunteers. I'm one of the few people that's not from law enforcement, not from this, not representing an agency.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, you're kind of a free agent, right? You got into this.
Free agent.
It's almost like very, very pure in a way.
Well, I have been saying the same thing for 40 years, but again, I was thinking, well, what makes us different are like they're trying to do the governor's recommendations to the governor, and we have been highly successful with Red Ribbon, obviously, and also with Lock Your Meds. I don't know if you've seen that.
I did read up a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just this morning, I thought, what is it about that level of policy who can't see how to allow the public to lead? See, here we've got the cart before the horse. Yes, and I think what makes Red Ribbon successful is we say, this is Red Ribbon. This is October 23rd through 27th. Here's Crazy Sock Day. Here's this. First of all, it's fun. Fun, fun, fun. Do something fun. Mock cocktails. We just
so you're a fan of fun as a tool, then.
Fun as a tool. How do you engage someone? And so this is in the wonk language. Educate all the pharmacists and the blah 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 to do blah 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 blah. Really? Somebody picking up the prescription?
What about the people?
I don't want to hear that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a missing link. And finally, maybe I'm just learning that I have to talk 12 different languages, depending on the spoke of the wheel. And
what's the most challenging language for you to speak, would you say?
I would say that whole government, federal language. It has been the same, and I should have known it, and I should have learned, but it's difficult. It's difficult
Okay.
because
Yeah,
there
I
are
could see that.
33 different agencies in the
Oh
federal
gosh.
government that rely on drug money for their survival. And I certainly have learned from the DEA, follow the money, because you
Hmm.
don't think about it. But if you feel like your job is threatened, why would you want a bunch of volunteers coming in and doing something that you're getting
Right.
paid to do?
Right. Like putting their hands in making a mess. Right. Right. You don't want that.
They're making a mess. They're making a mess. That's right.
Right.
And again, there's that wonderful mix, and I really have seen this. And this could be in the schools, it could be anywhere. Volunteers are great, but they also need the professional, and they
Hmm.
have to be able to work together. They really complement each other. I've said to the policeman before, "Hey, I don't try to be a policeman, but
Right.
they want to do all the prevention stuff." Now they have been our best partners, and they are in many ways are our easiest ones to work with. But I think it's just that defining all of us. I think we've come through a whole change of right, from when I grew up, which was even when we started. We had elks, we had lions. The lions are who started all the drug courts. I mean, it was all volunteer. It was Judge
And
Goldstein
that's
from
one of
down here.
those uh gosh, I can't think of the name, like one of those fraternity type clubs. I know it's not a fraternity, but it's like the
Well,
Elks Lodge
but
and the Lions Lodge.
it's just lions, elks. They call them the animal clubs. That used to
Yes,
be
right.
so common in America, and that's
Yeah.
and the Elks Club people would greet there, and so that's not just about losing the club; it's losing those sense of communities. And so when you look at more teenagers and young people using drugs, committing suicide,
Yeah.
what is one of the common factors? They have no sense of belonging. They have no
Yes.
sense of community. That's why I was really wanting to, when we were talking about Chris's daughter, which was
Yes.
someone who was working on Red Ribbon and the daughter recognized it. That's powerful. Hey,
Exactly.
did I know that?
I saw something that you liked actually on LinkedIn because I do my research before we have people on and stuff, and I it's something that I also love that I think really speaks to your point. And it was saying like suicide prevention isn't just sharing a hotline. It's creating resources for people. It's affordable housing. It's medical care. It's basically, again, to just illustrate what you've been saying, it's like it's boots on the ground and actually communicating with the people that are affected. Like you said, it's not the pharmacist telling a person picking up a script. It's talking to parents. It's talking to kids. It's making it, be something that's recognizable and digestible and understandable so that, like, kind of like you and I, we sort of fell into this career, into this line of work, but it involves other people, and this Red Ribbon Week for me as well it seems to be kind of that same vein, if I'm understanding it correctly.
It's exactly right. I mean, we're people tell us the best ideas. Like a fourth grade teacher from Oregon told us that we should plant tulip bulbs during Red Ribbon because then in April they would bloom and it would be drug awareness, alcohol awareness month.
Oh
She
wow,
told us
that's smart.
what people are smart. We
Yes.
have to invite them to share their information and feature them. Now, if you look at things like influencers and TikTok that's what everybody desires that. Who
Right.
doesn't desire? People they want you to recognize them and say hi, and you have to mean it. That's I tell this to my staff all the time. You've
I mean,
got
it's
to really
sincerity. You're
mean it.
absolutely right. Because
You
you're
got to
right. It's
mean
not
it.
just necessarily for a lot of people. It's not that they just want the platform or the light. It goes back to community and fostering that community and feeling connected to one another. I mean, I love meeting people. I love talking to people, and I think so many humans just that's natural for us. We're literally built that way biologically. And so when we lack that connection and we lack that meaning, I feel like we kind of lose our sense of purpose. And so when it comes to
Mhm.
something really horrifying like drug abuse and addiction that really isolates people in a lot of ways, it's so refreshing to hear that it's not just like an initiative of charts and graphs and legislation, which, like you said, it's its own language, but it's also planting tulip bulbs and finding a way to give it meaning so that people actually care about it.
But can you imagine when I talk about the tulip bulbs when I'm sitting on the governor's council? Oh, like, oh,
Well, I
here
mean,
she
yeah.
goes.
Oh gosh, I can imagine. Well, so
But you got to laugh. That's the other thing. You got to
right.
have a sense of humor because I know where I'm going. And I'm not going to just keep going around doing the things that don't work. What we've done
Yeah.
is we've created 4 campaigns. The
Okay.
campaigns are Family Day, that starts out in September, and it is Eat Dinner with Your Children. If you eat dinner with your children are 50% less likely to use drugs or have destructive behavior. Now, my mother, who is dead now at this point, she's rolling over in her grave. She's saying, Peggy, do you mean you have to tell people to eat with their children? Yes, today
Yeah,
we do.
honestly,
Today
especially,
we do.
we embrace chaos as Americans, and it's just the go, 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 and soccer practice and piano lessons and flute playing and, theater and sitting down to
This is a
dinner.
hands up on all those coaching things. That has been a disaster, if you ask me. We've created an industry. See, we've gotten really big on creating industries, and those industries take us away from our children. You want to play baseball? Go out in the backyard and toss the ball. I mean,
Honestly.
yeah, I mean, go do little things like that. We keep looking for a magic bullet. There isn't one. If the only one there really is that being together and being honest and laughing, playing games. I love playing games. Some of the games we play in our family, and the kids really get into it. Where did Uncle Dan go to school? Where did this happen? So you put all these things together, and they get to know their uncles and aunts, and it's just fun, but they're learning something. Um, so I would say that Family Day is important.
Yep.
Then along comes Red Ribbon. And so here's the thing. We have the same skills within each campaign,
Hmm.
but people get bored with doing the same thing. Now they focus on Red Ribbon. They do door decorating. They do photo contests. Here's the most wonderful thing. The theme for Red Ribbon for next year is in the process of being made right now by kids across America, and they'll compete, and we will announce the theme in January.
Wow. Like, way to really get long-term buy-in.
Long term buy in. Long
That's
term. And so here's another thing that's what I realize. You see, when you're in the government, you got to control something.
mhm.
We only control certain dates, certain things that we say. Then we turn it loose. It's hard to turn something loose, but we turn it loose. And
Yeah.
this year's theme, boy, be kind to your mind, be drug free. It is a winner. People are getting it. Be kind to your mind. So out of the mouths of
It's a good one.
babes, that's what we're getting. And so then we take a little rest because it's November and January, and no, November and December. And we will, like this time, one of the best things in Red Ribbon has been a Red Ribbon mocktail. People are loving it. So we'll put that out
Yeah.
in
Okay.
November and
Yeah.
December. But then we wait, and then in January with Publix pharmacies, and shout out to them because it's in the whole Southeast. The
Honestly, shout out
pharmacies,
Publix. Yes.
they do a wonderful job for us. And with anyone who gets an opioid prescription, they get the whole little sheet from us about what
I
it can
didn't
do.
I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Isn't that amazing?
That
And,
is
and see,
amazing because
that's a
awareness is
partnership.
so key.
Yeah. I mean, they can do that. I can't do that. So they just slip it in. They have little on their counters, they have little pictures and little things like this, and lock your meds. And
Hmm.
so
They
that's
have
been running
Narcan
since.
now at my
And
Publix.
hmm
I noticed that they have started placing Narcan on their counters as well, just,
good, good,
available
good,
for
good,
people as well.
good.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing where you just place it and be quiet. That's so, and encourage. So that's
Hmm.
like your meds. And then in starting March now, proms and graduations start earlier. March through May, early
Hmm.
June is our prom and graduation season, and that is called Safe Home Smart Parties.
Hmm.
And that is we've been doing that from day one. um, project graduation, things like this. But what I would show that alcohol thing, that is our hardest campaign because parents still
I
want
could
to say,
soapbox on that all day.
I want to teach my kids to drink. I don't think you need to teach them to drink.
Right, or I'd rather them do it here in my house. Like, I'm not here to shame anybody, but personally, I do not find that to be effective or beneficial to anyone. That's my opinion on that.
Well, it's true. It's not. I mean, first of all, gee, parents that host and do things like that, they are putting themselves in real jeopardy. Um,
Also true.
yeah, they really are. But I went to one school and it was predominantly Hispanic, and a lot of times we take the state attorneys with us, and they said, "Don't bring them." And I said, "Really? You don't want to hear that?" They said, "No, because it's our culture and we're going to do what we want to do."
Interesting.
And
That
then
is
here's the one I hear all the time. Well, I'm from Italy. I'm from France. I'm from Russia. No, we started having wine when we were 12. Have you ever seen the rates of
right.
alcoholism in those
Right.
countries?
You say you're fine, but let's look at the data. I don't know that the data suggests that you're actually fine.
That you're actually fine, right? So, and
So
people who drink before 15 are 5 times more likely to become an alcoholic. That's a big
that's
statistic.
a huge statistic. And the frustrating thing, and I don't want to get too off topic because, like, I could probably sit here all day and chat with you, preaching to the choir, honestly, on this topic. But it's, it is, in my opinion, one of the most innocuous, is that the right word? Insidious addictions and substance abuse issues because it is the most fashionable to have.
Absolutely.
It is fed to us. It is advertised everywhere. I talked last season about my own personal issue with, I went through a very significant grief period. Alcohol was my go-to, tale as old as time, and had to re-examine that relationship, etc. And it just slipped under the radar. I mean, if I were using probably any other substance, it might have raised some red flags, even in myself, probably sooner than it did for me with alcohol. And I know I'm not the only one.
Oh, you are not the only one. Our biggest
Definitely not.
epidemic going on right now with alcohol is wine and women. Wine and women.
Wine
They
nights and
they are they are whining themselves to death. I'll tell you, literally, quite literally, the death rate for women. In fact, one of my good friends in my age group, all of a sudden she dies, and then they had, that it was alcohol and
wow.
wine. And see, it like you say, it's insidious. You don't see it, you don't think about it, and it slips up on you. It,
Mm-hmm.
it
And it's
so
socially
I
accepted.
you don't expect it. Here's something good I heard 2 nights ago. This is really wonderful. And this is from a woman who's really into advertising things. And she said there is a new trend coming along of non alcoholic beverages that are to be chic, to be with it. There's a trend on having bars that are non alcoholic bars.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. That's a
Yep.
that's a that's a huge shift. So hope springs eternal.
Yes, it
I
does.
am
Well,
hoping.
speaking of that, then, to kind of help close us out, I want to know what upcoming projects or initiatives that either Informed Families is excited about, that you're excited about. What does the future look like? Do you know?
The future. I tell you, I've been a little discouraged, but for some reason, this red ribbon has. I am telling you, it has popped.
Hmm,
I mean,
really?
we're getting almost double the rate of participation, and we've always gotten good participation. But it's big enough that I'm looking at it and saying, how do we move people to the next step? And the next step is so red ribbon is really about awareness, and then we're trying to get you to do something,
Yes.
and setting the stage to talk to your child, doing that, or something I did see here yesterday at the governor's council that I really need to share with the public is they had a detective there who knew all the things about emojis and all the way kids interact on all kinds of social media. He needs to train and teach that to parents because
Yes.
parents don't know what they're seeing. And then he went into how they hide it. And so I guess
It is genuinely its own lingo, and it's evolving so rapidly. I'm in my late 30s, and I look back at our sort of internet lingo. I mean, that's completely outdated. Even 10 years ago at this point, it's outdated. 5 years ago. So that's a very good point. I wouldn't have considered.
Yeah, and this man, I would say he was in his 40s and he's got kids. And he said, I thought, and he's an expert on this social media. He said it is moving so rapidly and so many changes, and the way they can hide it from you. Just when you think they're no longer on, they're on. So that would be one of the projects I really do want to bring to the public, because and here's our challenge: the public has a time. Oh, we can keep them for about 8 seconds, but they've got to stay longer than 8 seconds. They've got to learn certain skills. So
what would you suggest then for listeners right now that, okay, now they're aware, they want to do something. We've told them action is the next step. So for people listening, what can they do?
If you are a
want to get
parent,
involved, or
you ask your child, did your school do Red Ribbon? And then that starts a conversation. If they did it, fantastic. You'll learn something, and back and forth. If they didn't do it, then you need to ask the school, why didn't you participate in Red Ribbon? Please go to our websites, and because there's something called school climate, and every school is judged on that. What that really means is not how high your thermostat is. It's how well people get along with each other, how much of a community you're building. So the 4 campaigns that I talked about are to build a community. Go to our website, look and see which one grabs you. Someone may be more interested in Safe Home Smart Parties. Sign up with us and become one of our ambassadors, because just like you are an ambassador, do you know? And that's the other thing. We can only tell people to a certain point, right? And then they've got to do it themselves.
They have to, right. It's the whole adage, you can lead a horse to water, etc.
That's right.
Well, anything that we haven't covered yet that you really wanted to still be able to say or add?
I just want to say how delightful it was to meet you and to be here.
Thank you.
And that's really important, and to help us get the word out. And that's the greatest
honestly.
thing we need. Yeah, we need people to get the word out, wear a little ribbon, do something. I can't tell you, like Dr. Meds, I had this necklace. When I wear, and people just think it's a necklace in a store, they'll say, oh, I love that necklace. Well, now you can say something to them.
I like that. So, that's clever. I wonder, I'm going to poke around and see if I can find anything, because I like dangly earrings and, flashy stuff. I'm very toned down today. So maybe I'll do red ribbon nails or something next year. That's a good idea.
Great. Yeah. And then you can just say, this is the greatest campaign. It gets everybody involved. My goal is to make people have FOMO, make them think it's so great.
Honestly, though, that works really well on me and basically everyone in my generation. You make us feel left out, and we want to be in the action.
Well, get in there.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to me and share this information. And, I don't know what else to say. Thank you. This was really a pleasure. And
thank you.
For our listeners, all the links and things that we talked about, I am going to drop those down in, I think just in not the bio, what's that called? Just the description. I'm a professional. And then we'll go from there. So again, thank you so much. And you can find their info at the links that we've included.
Thank you. Keep in touch.
Okay, you guys. Well, thank you for joining me, and it is really great to be back. I missed you all and am so excited for what we have planned for season 2 of the Addiction Help podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, if you are missing Dan, because we all love Dan, go and check out his new podcast called Victory Over Vices, where he talks about addiction and recovery as it relates to the the whole world of sports. It's an entire thing, and I didn't even know that. So check him out. We'll drop those links down below. And you can find us if you like what you heard today and you want to kind of keep up with us. You can find us on Spotify. We're on YouTube. Basically anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and where you're listening now, you can subscribe so you get notifications when we have a new episode, which we try to do weekly now that we're back. And you can also follow us if you can't get enough of us. You can also follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook if that's your thing. And we will drop those links in the description as well. So like I said, lots of links and things for you guys in the description. I am super stoked to be back. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Okay, thanks. Bye.